Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Now let's start with the story. Back in 1974, Rory brought me a land deal that was much bigger than I could handle alone, even with owner financing. I spoke to Brady about it to see if he'd be interested in partnering with Rory and me. At first, he hesitated, saying it was more than he could afford, but Rory was persistent. He explained his vision for subdividing the land and selling portions to reduce our financial exposure, promising to work day and night to make it happen. By then, I had come to deeply respect Rory's instincts in land deals, especially in our region. I liked the property and believed Rory could pull it off. The main complication, at least for Brady, was that Rory wasn't putting in any of his own capital. He had recently bought a massive brick house on the Connecticut River, complete with a dock, boathouse, and a guest cottage, sinking all his resources into it. He was carrying a large mortgage and had nothing left to invest. Rory believed in the deal so strongly that he urged us to act before the land's value skyrocketed. After a week of trying to convince Brady, Rory gave up and went to Mr. Bennett to see if he could find outside investors. Mr. Bennett said he'd ask around. Soon after, Tessa, Brady's wife, called me. She'd heard about the deal and asked what was going on. Assuming she was worried Brady was being pressured, I reassured her that he had already passed on the deal and Rory was now looking elsewhere for funding. But Tessa surprised me. Brady said no, she admitted, but I control the trust money, not him. He told me you and Rory think it's a great opportunity. Would Rory be willing to come to the farm and talk to me? I pushed back. Tessa, I don't think that's a good idea. Brady won't appreciate you stepping in like that. You two have done well with him managing things. It's best not to upset what's been working. But she didn't back down. Brady said I can look at it if I want. He's unhappy about putting up half the money and only getting a third of the profits. I want Rory to explain that. I clarified. Rory found the deal and will do all the work. Normally, when I partner with him, I put up all the money and we split the profits 50-50ths. He only agreed to a third this time to bring Brady in. Honestly, you should probably just sit this one out. Rory already went to Mr. Bennett for investors. We argued a bit longer before I handed the phone to Elena when Tessa said she needed to speak with her. I went back to reading the paper, assuming it was over. But Elena soon came into the living room. Jackie, why are you dismissing Tessa like that? Doesn't she have a right to know what's going on? Are only the men allowed to make these decisions? It was a surprise Elena had never shown any interest in our business affairs. Whenever I tried to talk to her about investments, she'd walk away, saying she had other things to do. She liked spending the money, not discussing how it was made. Elena, what makes you think that Tessa might be better qualified to make an investment decision than Brady? Brady has a lot of experience with buying and selling land, and with making decisions about business having directly to do with land. As far as I know, Tessa has never interfered with Brady in any of that before. So what makes this investment different? Why is she suddenly qualified to second-guess Brady's decisions or opinions? Can I call over to Rory and Sandy's and ask him a few questions myself? Or are you going to tell me that I don't have the right to find out more about what you and he are planning? Elena, please be my guest. There isn't anything Rory or I are planning that you shouldn't know as much about as you want to. She smiled at me then. The total victory smile that I'd grown used to looking at after she had backed me into an uncomfortable corner. I went back to the paper and heard her talking to someone on the kitchen phone. An hour passed by, and she was still talking on the phone. I was about ready to head off to bed when she got off of the telephone and came into the living room and unceremoniously plunked herself down on my lap. Jackie, please try to be home for dinner tomorrow night by 6:30, because we're having several people over for dinner and then a discussion about that real estate project you and Rory have been working on. I told her that getting home wouldn't be a problem and asked her who exactly would be joining us. Your mother and father, my mother and father, Brady and Tessa, and Rory and Sandy. I nodded to her, wondering whether she thought my parents were supposed to have any money to invest in the deal. I didn't ask her any questions though, and she seemed satisfied that I didn't. When I went over to pick up my wood the next morning, Brady didn't say much. He just grunted when I asked him if he was okay with Tessa getting all involved in his business dealings. Tessa came out before I was ready to leave and told me that Elena wanted me to stop off at the bakery on my way home and pick up some French bread and something nice for dessert. Brady gave me a hoarse laugh and told me that it was nice to see that I was helping my wife with the grocery shopping. He wanted to know if I could recommend a good laundry detergent to him. One, but that wouldn't make his hands rough and chapped. I ignored him and told Tessa that I was really pleased to hear that her pistol practice was starting to pay off for her. Brady flipped me the bird, and I pantomimed throwing him a big kiss. I drove home with 3 loaves of French bread and 2 big pies, one an apple pie and the other a blueberry. Elena told me to get cleaned up and changed for our dinner guests. I made a big face at her, then did what she told me to do. Elena had baked up some deep dish lasagna using 4 different kinds of cheese. We had a nice lettuce salad with the homemade dressing that Elena's mother had made and brought over. Tessa had brought over some of Big Tony's cellar corked Dago red wine. My father had a case of Rheingold beer and half a fifth of Four Roses whiskey. Rory brought Sandy, and she brought over some of her fudge brownies. All the talk at the supper table was of family and how fast all of the children were growing. After dinner, while the ladies were doing the dishes and clearing off the tables and putting the leftovers away, the 5 men went out on my front porch and smoked and had a beverage or two. Elena finally came out to get us and let us know that they were all ready for Rory to come tell everyone about his latest real estate project. Elena and the women had brought the chairs out from the kitchen and the 10 of us sat in the living room. Everyone looked at Rory as he stood up and started to talk. This is a pretty simple deal, really. Mr. Comstock died a couple years ago, and he left everything to his wife. She is getting on in years, and the kids have been pressuring her to convert some of the holdings over to cash. I don't know what all else she owns, but the property that she put up for sale is a little over 300 net acres of what was once a half section of land with over 1,000 feet of frontage on each side of the old post road. The land is all fairly densely wooded, but the important thing is that it backs right up to the new housing development that Manny Trujillo is putting up at Farley's Brook. He got a density waiver and is putting up 4 houses to the acre out there. Usually, they were only letting builders go 2 to the acre, and that's how land is currently priced out that way. There is no reason at all, after allowing one builder to get heavier density, that they wouldn't approve the same thing for the next guy who wants to build out that way. The land for sale is for $400,000, and they want $100,000 down. They'll carry a note for the rest at 6%, interest only for 5 years, and then all due and payable. There is a provision that we could split up the land and sell off chunks of it, as long as we pay down the mortgage as we do so. Now, what I want to do is to split the property into 3 parts. The first part is 80 acres, and it is right behind the new subdivision. I know I can either sell that to Manny or another builder for at least $3,000 per acre. With Manny building out there already, there is electric, water, phones, sewers, and a paved road right up to our property line. The second part of the property would be about 160 acres, and that would be right behind the 80 acres that we would sell either to Manny or to some other builder. That property is the one I want us to hold on to. The third piece would be 62 acres, and it is the piece with all the frontage on the old post road. I'm pretty sure that I can get at least $250,000 for that piece from one of several land speculators I know. Brady says that the wood on the whole property is worth at least $30,000 to him, and we'd use that to make the interest payments, so that we wouldn't have any debt service while we're waiting to pay off the note. The interest payment would be $1,500 a month. Taxes would be another $400 a month. I'd expect that we would be able to get $800,000 for the second parcel if we can hold on to it for 2 or 3 years. That would be our profit on the deal. Jackie and I have already paid Mrs. Comstock $5,000 in option money, and we have another 45 days before our option runs out. Anybody have any questions? I have a question, Rory. How come you don't put up any of the money, but you still get as much of the profits as the people who do put the money up? That's a very good question, Tessa. The answer is because I'm the one who has to do all the work. I'm the one who invested all the time into looking around to find something like this. I'm the one you're going to be screaming at if this thing doesn't work out as good as I think it will. Does that answer your question? No, Rory, it doesn't. Why can't you do all of that for 20% or 25%? Brady and my father were nodding their heads in agreement with Tessa. I just sat there, having talked with Rory earlier in the afternoon, waiting for him to tell all of them what he'd earlier told me. I don't really think I can explain it to your satisfaction, Tessa, but I'll try one more time anyway. Normally, when I do a deal like this, I have a single investor. Up to now, that has always just been Jackie. This is a much bigger deal than what we've ever done before, and Jackie can't handle all of it. If he could do it all, he'd put up all the money, and I'd get 50% of the profits. That's how we've always done it, figuring the money guy should get half the profit, and the guy who handles the whole deal gets the other half. I told Jackie that if he wanted to bring Brady in on the deal, I'd take less of a percentage to make it easier for Brady to invest. After Brady passed on the deal, I went to Mr. Bennett and asked him to find us another investor from outside the family. I told him that Jackie and I would each take 40% and the outside guy would get 20% because he wasn't family. A couple of days ago, Mr. Bennett called me back and gave me a name of someone to go see, saying that he was expecting to hear from me. I went out to see him this morning, and it looks like we've made ourselves a deal. He puts up half the money and he gets 25% of the profits. I gave him the extra 5% because in a way he is family too. At the very least, his daughter is family. Our new partner is going to be B.D. Poynton, Joni's ex-husband. Rory smiled over at me and sat back down. Well, if you didn't need any more money, Why'd you drag all of us over here tonight for? My father was being his usual gracious self. I think it was because Jackie and Elena missed you and Ma and wanted to have you come visit for a nice supper and some family conversation. Why? Did you think they expected you to invest with us? As a matter of fact, I did, smartass. I've gotten the paperwork all ready to borrow $10,000 on my life insurance policy. I was willing to throw that into the pot if the two of you really needed it. I know it's not enough to do the whole thing, but it's all we could raise for you right now. Rory looked like he wanted to break out crying, seeing what my father and mother had been willing to sacrifice on our behalf. They weren't investing in any land. They were investing in their sons. What about Brady and me? You were just going to leave us out in the cold? We came over here tonight to take another look at this thing of yours, trying to see if we could find a way to participate under fairer terms, family terms. You just give up on us because we still hadn't ironed out all of the details yet? After Tessa was finished talking, Elena's mother looked like she wanted to say something, but Tom, her husband, grabbed her knee and passed her a look to be quiet. I didn't fully commit to BD, so there isn't anything that's final right now. I told him that I had to check things out with Jackie and some of the family before I could give him a definite okay to the deal. As far as Jackie and I are concerned, we're still ready to live up to our original offer to Brady. Brady, do you want in, putting up half the money for 1/3 of the profits? Brady looked over at Tessa, waiting for her to make the decision. Tessa looked uncertain about making a commitment now that it was back in the offing. Brady, even if you decide not to invest in this thing, Jackie and I will still give you the logging contract. You know that, right? Okay, Rory, I guess Tessa and I are coming in. It isn't like we don't trust you guys, or that we wanted to make you take less than a fair share either. It's a lot of money though, and it's not easy to even think about parting with so much money and taking on such a big mortgage too. Brady shook hands with Rory and I, and the deal was done. Well, what about your mother and I then? All we get is some lasagna and a slice of pie? I didn't come over here to be overlooked on the investing or on the profits you'll be making. What do you three have for us in this deal? I'll tell you what, Pop, I've got something here for you too. You know that $10,000 you're so anxious to be borrowing on your insurance? You go ahead and borrow it, and then you just loan it to me. I'll need some money to keep up my house payments anyway. I'll pay you 1/3 of my 1/3, but I'll also guarantee you that, if this doesn't work out, I'll pay you back your 10 grand plus all the interest you have to pay. If it does work out though, I won't have to pay the money back. How's that? That got both of my parents smiling. They could understand a no-risk opportunity when it was offered to them, and Rory knew that I wouldn't let them get stuck holding the bag if the thing somehow blew up in our faces. I looked over at Elena, and she was looking at me and casting her eyes left and right over at her parents. Me, Tom, if you and Flo want to come in on this, you can buy into my piece of the investment. I'm putting up $50,000 for 1/3 of the profits. Do you want to invest and take over a percentage of my ownership? I was hoping they would refuse. Not because I was greedy, but because I didn't want to be in any partnership with my mother-in-law. Of course, she chirped right up for the two of them. Thank you, Jackie. We'd like to buy in for $10,000 too. So would that mean we would have 1/3 of your 1/3 like your brother gave to your parents? Actually, no. If you are paying 20% of my costs, you take over 20% of my ownership. Additionally, you'd be responsible for 20% of any losses I incur. I doubt that there will be any losses, but it's always a possibility. There are never any guarantees in investing, you know. Tom agreed right away, and we shook on it. I couldn't help but think about how much more preferable it would have been if I could have swung the whole deal by myself. This deal was now shaping up to be a logistical nightmare for me since I was the one who always got stuck doing the accounting on these deals and taking care of all the costs and disbursements. At least Elena was happy, and that had to be worth something, didn't it? We broke up the meeting, and everyone headed back to their respective homes. I hope you learned a valuable lesson tonight, Jackie. It went so much better once the women all got involved, and we were able to smooth over all the differences. I hope you appreciate what I helped put together for you. At 2 o'clock that afternoon when I had spoken with Rory, I was going to have 37.5% of what I believed was an $800,000 profit. Going to bed that evening, I had approximately $100,000 less profit potential and had saved myself $10,000 on the one hand and obligated myself to another $10,000 since I was the de facto guarantor that my brother would pay back my parents' life insurance policy loan. Plus, I had to be partners with 6 more people instead of just 1 more. I figured that if I could just get Elena to assist me in my businesses, I could be bankrupt within a couple of years. Yes, sweetheart, I did learn a lesson, thank you. I'll try really hard not to forget it too. We went ahead and opened up escrow on the property the following morning. Mr. Bennett called me, and he strongly advised me to set up a formal limited partnership agreement that clearly spelled out all the various ownership positions and setting down exactly how everything was to be run. He recommended a lawyer to me who he claimed was very well versed in limited partnerships. I followed his advice, and Rory and I made an appointment and went in to see him that next afternoon. He recommended that we have a single general partner, Rory, and that Brady and I be the sole limited partners. He drew up 2 separate agreements between Elena's parents and I, and between Rory and my parents. The partnership was to have a maximum lifetime of 7 years. We had to file copies of the partnership agreement with the state, and it became a separate tax-paying entity. The main advantage, as far as I could see, was that the limited partners had far less liability in the event that the deal went sour. Rory, on the other hand, was now more subject to scrutiny by regulatory agencies, and he assumed most of the financial liability in the event that things got screwed up somehow. To offset this, Rory had almost unlimited powers to do anything he wanted to with the partnership assets without having to secure prior approval from the limited partners. Rory could borrow on the partnership assets if he chose to. I probably should have paid more attention to all the details before Brady and I signed everything, but I relied on Rory almost totally on these deals and didn't question what I was giving him in the way of control over this investment. Brady signed just because he saw that I had. My parents and Elena's parents signed their separate agreements with Rory and I, and everything was all set to go from our end. We went ahead and closed on the deal early in order to give Rory the best opportunity to get the land divided up into 3 pieces and to line up the buyers for the 2 smaller parcels we were planning to sell off. As soon as the land was ours, Brady sent out a crew to survey the trees and plan out a harvesting program for the logging that he would be doing. After a couple days had gone by, he phoned me to say that everything looked okay from his end to begin the logging. I told him to start as soon as he wanted to, and that I was leaving all of that strictly up to him because I didn't have any plans or timetable of my own. It was to be almost the last thing about this investment deal that didn't have problems and complications to it. Rory did manage to get the property split up into the 3 separate parcels, just like he had planned for, but it wasn't done quickly, and it wasn't accomplished nearly as easily or as cheaply as he had projected. Watergate was still in the news every night, and the president was about to resign in disgrace. Inflation was also in the news, but only insofar as it was making it harder for builders to get credit for their projects. Manny Trujillo was one of the first builders to fall victim to the financing problems, and he lost his whole development to foreclosure with the banks when his takeout construction loans and in a series of bridge loans came due, and he hadn't been able to complete a single home. Manny had fallen victim to the practice of doing everything with subcontractors rather than using construction crews of his own. Overnight, his Farley's Brook project was stopped until after the several banks that were fighting over who had priority could come to some agreement. There were numerous subs that stepped up claiming that they hadn't been paid for their work, and various liens were filed against the project as well. Because of the uncertainty of the times, all of Rory's land speculator friends were sitting back on their heels waiting to see if the bottom was going to drop out of the market, so they could step in with their cash and be bottom feeders. After 6 months had gone by, without any progress in the development other than Brady's steady harvesting of the trees, Rory had pretty well gone through all of the money that he'd borrowed from my father and was looking to me for financial help. Elena's mother was calling Elena every other day, giving her plenty of grief over her contention of Elena's having coerced her into coming in on what she now was referring to as Jackie's folly. Elena, in turn, was begging me to step in and do something to get her mother off of her back. Tessa, though to a much lesser extent, was showing signs of nervous strain about the possibility that the mortgage would come due before we could sell the properties and we'd all lose the land, and with that, any hope of getting our original investments back. Brady had become awfully quiet around me as well, to the point where I felt a distinct tension when I came out to the farm to pick up my loads and discuss the furniture business and the following week's delivery scheduling. I finally decided that it was time for another dinner and meeting about the investment situation. I made damn sure to hold it at Rory's house this time, since he was the general partner and he'd be the one doing almost all of the talking. We had a nice meal, only talking about the food that was served. Sandy had been taking classes at the YWCA, studying authentic Mexican cooking, and she'd really gone all out with tacos, chili rellenos, and taquitos, including a nice guacamole dip and chips, and a homemade salsa. She even made authentic Mexican beans and rice, with cheese melted over the beans. It was once again the 10 of us, and this time there was much less talk about family and children growing so fast. This time the table conversation centered squarely on who was to blame for the fact that our big investment wasn't going anywhere. I took as much of it as I could before I finally had to tell everyone to be quiet and just let it go until we were done enjoying Sandy's wonderful dinner. Sandy had been the one most affected emotionally by the heated table conversation. She knew how much trouble Rory was in, every day trying to make something happen on the land, while still doing everything in his power to not lose their own dream house and the property it was on. Rory had rented out the little caretaker's cottage next to his house, trying to get at least a little money coming in for food and the other things they absolutely needed in order to live. Their home was really beautiful, big, and with a view of the river that was breathtaking the first time that you saw it. It is safe to say that no one in our family had ever owned anything to compare with that property. We all retired to the big living room after we finished eating, and then the inquisition began in earnest. I know that all of you are as disappointed as I am that things don't seem to be running as smoothly as I thought they would go when we first formed this partnership. The investment and building climates have shifted significantly since then, and I don't think that there was any way that we could have anticipated any of it. I want you all to know that I am still working towards a profitable conclusion to this investment, and that I have confidence that we'll all make good money in the end. Do you have any question or points that you want to have clarified by me? I've got a question, Rory. Where are we going to get the $2,000 a month to pay the taxes and interest on the land after Brady gets done cutting down all those trees? Tessa probably tried to keep the anger out of her question, but if so, she wasn't entirely successful. The partnership agreement clearly calls for the limited partners to pay any assessments I might need to make in order to protect the partnership assets and to meet partnership obligations. To date, because of the logging money, it hasn't been necessary to make any assessments. Hopefully, the trees will continue to support our debt service for long enough to allow us to pay down or pay off the underlying mortgage. After that, all we'll have to worry about is approximately $200 a month for taxes on our remaining parcel. So Brady and Jackie get stuck throwing more of our money down the drain every single month, and you get to just sit up here in this big mansion of yours and wait comfortably for the day we finally get rid of this investment. Have I got that right, Rory? Tessa was definitely not trying to hide any of her anger now. Tessa, why are you being so hateful to Rory? You might not know it, but we're probably going to lose this big mansion, as you call it, and every penny we've ever put into it. How long did you think we could go without a penny coming in to pay our bills? How do you think Rory feels when he talks to you all the time, and he knows that you're all blaming him for something that he didn't have any way of anticipating? Rory has done everything he possibly could to make this investment work out for all of us. You seem to think that you're the only ones who stand to lose anything if it doesn't turn out good. You couldn't be more wrong, Tessa. I hope that you're satisfied knowing that we'll be out of our home any day now, so you won't have to envy us having such a wonderful place to live in and raise our family. Sandy got up and ran off into one of the back rooms, crying as she ran. Rory got up, as if to go after her, but seemed to change his mind halfway and sat back down in his chair. My father got up and signaled my mother to get up as well. We'll be leaving now, Rory. You tell Sandy that we'll help in any way that we can. Don't you worry about that insurance thing anymore, you hear me? We'll just wait and see how this thing plays itself out. You come over and see me tomorrow, okay? And I'll see if I can't come up with some idea or something to get you some money to get caught up on some things. They left right away. Rory turned to Brady and Tessa and explained that things were hard right now on Sandy because of their money problems and because they had just found out that she was expecting again. Maybe the rest of you can afford to simply sit around and watch your money get flushed away, but not Tom and I. We've got 2 girls still at home or away at college, and a grandson with a medical condition that we need to worry about. That money was important to us, and I'm sorry we ever got involved with the lot of you. Tom looked stricken as he listened to his wife's words, but he'd long ago given up any thoughts of trying to control either his wife or his eldest daughter when they decided to speak their minds. I'll tell you what, Flo, even though I can't really afford to make you this offer, if it would make you feel better about things, I'll buy you out of your share of the investment. There's one condition to my offer, though. You have to promise never to bring it up again with Elena. What do you say? Elena started to protest, only to be rudely countered by her mother. The whole 10,000, Jackie? Yes. What about the interest that we've lost? I withdraw my offer, Flo. Good luck with finding someone to give you another one. Forget the interest then. When can we get our money back? I'll go to the bank tomorrow. Will that be soon enough? That will be fine. I'll consider this a binding agreement. Florence, it is at times like this that I wish fervently that we'd never met each other. Jackie, you don't have to buy us out. We both knew that there was a risk to making this investment. You can be sure that she wouldn't be offering you terms if it had turned out to be profitable. Tom, I want to do it. Elena is too worried about this thing already. I think we'd all feel better if she didn't have to worry about constantly having to answer your wife's questions and accusations. I'll have Elena bring over your money tomorrow. Can you make sure that she gets the original partnership papers that you and I signed when she drops the money off? I'll see to it, Jackie. I'm sorry that we turned out to be such poor partners for you. Elena's parents got up and left too. That left just Brady, Tessa, Rory, Elena, and I in the room. Then, Elena got up and went off looking to see if Sandy was all right. Tessa started right in by wondering, out loud, whether she and Brady would get a chance to get their money back as well. Terry, if you really want to bail out on this, maybe we can find someone to take over your interest. It might mean having to take a loss for right now, but Rory and I will make your losses good if we ever sell the property for a profit. Do you want us to look around for someone? Why should Brady and I have to take a loss? If we sell out now, we'd be giving up any chance we ever had for making a profit. Isn't that penalty enough? It isn't about penalties, Terry. It's about the changing economic prospects if we're going to go into a downturn with the economy. I don't know if that is what's happening, but if the economy does go into the tank, then it might be years before they start developing up in that part of the state again. But we only have less than 4.5 years before that $300,000 note becomes all due and payable. I'd rather have you guys stay in the deal if you can, because this isn't that good of a time to go looking for another investor. Jackie, if you could look around for us, I'd like to get out with only a reasonable loss. I don't sleep that good knowing every night that big mortgage is somewhere off in the distance, but still coming due. If you could get us at least 35 back, then I'd be all right with waiting and maybe getting the last 15 somewhere down the road after you do sell. As Brady was talking, he was wringing his hands. I could tell that his wanting to quit on our partnership wasn't an easy thing for him to ask for. I'd known Brady all of my life, and he didn't have very much quit in him. Brady, Rory, and I will do our best for you. You know that, right? Terry, everybody feels bad that this isn't going like we all planned and hoped. You shouldn't be mad at Rory. None of this is his fault. You heard what Sandy said, right? We need to do something to make sure they come out of this in one piece too. The best thing we have is the certain knowledge that we'll always try to help each other all that we can. Jackie, I didn't mean to sound so bitchy earlier. Rory, I'm sorry for the way I talk to you sometimes. Brady and I have just been so worried that we'll wind up losing all of our investment. This whole thing is just so big, and we're not used to throwing these kinds of numbers around. If you can get somebody to take our place, even if we take a loss right now, we'd both feel better. After Brady and Tessa left, Rory and I talked in his living room. I found out a lot more about how deeply in hock he really was. The money he'd gotten from my parents was half used up before he even saw it. He had to pay off the things he'd fallen behind on before the loan came through. The rest of the money went over the next 3 months, and he hadn't been able to make a house payment for the past 3 months. He and Sandy were sitting at home every night expecting to get a foreclosure notice from the bank every day. He owed me about $3,000 already, money that he'd borrowed for special needs that had come up. I had not gotten into his personal finances that much with him, and had assumed he was in short, temporary binds. He'd gone all over trying to refinance the house, but without provable income, refinancing was proving very tough. Jackie, I need $5,000 just to get caught up to today. I don't see any way I'm going to come out of this and still keep this house. I don't want to borrow any more from the family. I shouldn't have bought this much house. I could never have afforded it anyway. It's the kind of house that people like Judge Avery or some other big millionaires should own, not a working stiff like me. My problem is that I can never seem to say no to myself. If I see something really nice, I just want it. Rory, how much did you and Sandy buy this place for anyway? We got it for $200,000, Jackie. It was a bargain too at that price. We still owe more than $150, plus most of the furniture we bought on credit too. That's another $6,000 we owe. What do you think this house and all the land are worth right now? Right now, if I got real lucky, someone might give me $180 for it, maybe even $185. After closing costs and commissions, I'd come out with $165 to $168, and that's if I could even find a good buyer before the bank forecloses on me. The market is scared right now, Jackie. Nobody wants to pay full price now, not when half the buyers already think that things might head south in a month or two, and they could wait and possibly pick themselves up a real bargain. How important is the house to you, Rory? Are you willing to risk everything in order to keep it? What everything, Jackie? All I own is already tied up in this house. I don't have anything more to risk. I do, Rory. I have more that I can risk. I just need to know that this is really important to you, that's all. Because if it is, I know how we can get the money to save it for you. If it goes wrong, though, and the economy does tank, and we can't make money from the land deal, well then we'll both be moving back to Bill Avenue with Mom and Pop. Are you talking about your business, Jackie? If you are, then that's crazy talk. Elena would never go for it. And you can't take a step like that without letting her know about it first. Let's just let this thing go and try to make a new start with other investments while we wait and see what happens on the big deal. You're not looking at it right, Rory. This is the other big investment. The equity you have in this house, if things turn out to not go into the shitter I mean. I will discuss it with Elena, but I already know what she'll say, and that is that we have to try to do something to help you and Sandy. It will take you working your butt off on the other deal though. I mean 16 hours a day and 7 days a week, Rory. You'd have to do it all, and I'd take care of seeing that your payments got made and there was food on your table until either the deal gets done or else we both run out of resources and options. I'm betting that you will pull it through for all of us. I don't know what to say, Jackie. I don't want to drag you down with me, but I still do believe in the value of this house and of the potential profits of the land deal. If you do it, I'll work as hard as I can to make everything come out right. You just remember, though, that even that might not be enough in the end. Months earlier, my banker had practically forced me to accept an open line of credit that was secured by my businesses and equipment. The amount of the credit line was $75,000. I'd never touched it before because I'd been afraid to, and I really liked the idea of not owing any money on my businesses. The deals I'd already done with Rory had made me a lot of money. I'd never come close to losing money on any real estate deal that he'd brought me. The clincher for me was the fact that inflation was already in plentiful evidence. We'd had the first big scare with the oil prices the year before, and Nixon's price control attempts had been a spectacular failure. I figured that inflation was all about money losing its purchasing power, and when that happened, people would need to get out of cash and into assets that appreciated as much as the dollar depreciated. The less money was worth, the more commodities would cost. Borrowing is always a good thing if you can pay off the debt with cheaper dollars, money that isn't worth as much as the money you borrowed in the first place. Elena and I left shortly after Rory and I had reached our agreement. On the way home, I broached the subject of what I was planning on doing. Elena, I think we need to buy out Brady and Tessa's share in the land deal ourselves, and then we need to start really helping out Rory and Sandy until the deal either comes through or we all go broke. Really, Jackie, do we have enough money to do all of that? Only if we take out a big loan on the business and risk everything we own, including our house. Let's do it then. Sandy will be so relieved. I bet Rory will feel better too, and he'll be able to do a better job on getting that land deal sold. Tessa and Brady will be so happy too. Aren't you even a little bit worried that we're going to wind up broke and living back near my parents? Jackie, we're young. We can live anywhere. Besides, you could always go back to caddying or something. It isn't like you don't have some skills. Arthur Murray's is always advertising for dance instructors. There's a million things you could do. I hope you realize that I love you in spite of your mother. Sometimes, Jackie, you know how to say exactly the right thing to me. I was wondering what I could do to make up for helping to get her involved in our investment thingy. Poor Daddy. Did you hear what he said to her? You'll never be sorry that we met, will you? Never, baby. And that's a promise. I'm glad you asked me about all of this, Jackie. I feel like you consider me to be a part of your business brain trust now. Maybe not up there with Mr. Bennett, but still someone to be consulted. I shut up and just drove home. I didn't want to spoil things and tell her that she would have the seat next to Lenny in the brain trust pecking order. I was feeling better than when we'd set out on the evening's journey, even though I might have been committing financial suicide. The next morning, I went over to my bank and drew down my full line of credit. I got a cashier's check for $10,000 for my in-laws, another one for $50,000 for Brady and Tessa's trust, and finally, a third one for $10,000 for my parents. When I had the checks all in hand, I went back home to deliver the first one to Elena to take over to her mother. I had a difficult time getting my parents to take back their money. It was only after I convinced them that both Rory and I might need their help if this deal didn't work out, that they agreed to take the money and put it back with the insurance company. I told them that they were still in for a third of Rory's profits, and we'd take back the $10,000 from their end before giving them their cut. Tessa and Brady were surprised when I told them what Rory and I were going to do. Brady told me that he'd keep enough money free so that I could go to an auction with Uncle Donald and get myself some delivery trucks to start up all over again, if worse came to worse. I went over to Rory's after that, and I gave him a checkbook and told him that he needed to go to my bank and give them a completed signature card. I had started him off with $10,000 and told him to pinch every penny because we didn't know how long this whole thing would take. Sandy came over and gave me a hug and told me that she knew that Rory could always count on me to stick by him to the end. She told me that she wouldn't have minded so much giving up that big house and the incredible view, but that Rory had been so proud to be able to buy it and to have them all live in it. She was afraid of what losing it might do to him. Rory walked me out to my car, and then he borrowed $60 to tide him over until he made it down to the bank the next morning. How could you not love someone that possessed that kind of nerve? Rory spent the next 6 months working both night and day. Each morning he'd be up and out of the house early, running around in his car in order to make the rounds of various planning and zoning departments of the county and various municipalities. He had sources inside each department that would help keep him abreast of any new developments or filings for permits. If anyone within 50 miles of our land decided to build something, Rory knew about it within the week. If a developer submitted plans for any project involving more than 2 or 3 new houses, Rory was looking over his plot maps and construction plans even before some agency approved them. Evenings were spent with Rory out knocking on doors and introducing himself to property owners in the same area of our project. Rory had a way about him that relaxed people and put them at ease around him. He'd just introduce himself and tell them about the property that we owned, inviting their ideas and, at the same time, learning what plans they might have for their own land for the future. People were surprisingly candid with Rory, once they were satisfied that he wasn't there to sell them anything. They often told him things that they wouldn't have shared with an agent or a broker. Every night when he would get home, Rory would take a couple of hours and write himself copious notes about what he'd done and anything that he'd learned that day. At the end of that 6-month period, while we were no closer to selling any of our 3 parcels, Rory had picked up an awful lot of valuable knowledge and insights that would serve the two of us well far into the future. As we all knew it would, the day finally arrived when Brady told me that he'd logged out the last of the good wood from the property. From then on, I need to come up with almost $2,000 a month to pay for the interest on the mortgage note and the taxes on the land. Rory was over sitting in my living room, filling me in on the interesting things he was finding out in his travels when I told him what Brady had told me. "How long do you think we have Jackie before we can't keep up with the interest payments?" I hadn't wanted to worry Rory any more than he was, but the firewood business had been shrinking a little bit every year for the last several years. The furniture wood business wasn't shrinking as badly, but the profits were declining there as well. My best guess was that I could hold out for another year before I'd have to give up the ghost and admit that we were through. Between the interest and taxes on the land, the interest on the business line of credit, paying the living expenses that Elena and I had, plus Rory's work and living expenses, which were a lot higher because of his hefty mortgage, I'd been slowly eating into my savings. Without the logging money from the land every month, I'd be burning up savings at about $3,000 a month. "Rory, you don't have to worry about anything but getting us a big profit on that land deal for at least another year. You let me worry about the day-to-day finances, and you just worry about making us both rich. We've got enough that you don't need to panic, but we've got to watch out for any unnecessary expenses. Don't go out and buy a new car or get Sandy a mink coat for her birthday. It's okay to get diapers and clothes for my beautiful niece, though." Sandy had given birth to a little girl, Catherine Elizabeth, and she had her father's big dimple in exactly the same place as Rory's. Rory was a very good father to his 2 boys, and often took them along with him in the summers, stopping off to fish, or to just take walks through the woods. In the winter time, he kept a couple snow sleds in his trunk and would often take the boys out for sledding and snowball fights in some farmer's hilly pasture. I knew he was dying for us to have money again because he wanted to buy a big boat and motor up and down the Connecticut River with his family. Rory wanted to do all the things with his sons that he and my father had never done together. Since he and my father had done very little together, Rory had a long list of things that he wanted to do. After another few months had passed by and there was nothing going on with the land, Rory started getting discouraged about the prospects for ever getting that property sold off. He would come over to my house and give me all the reasons why he was losing his faith in the deal. I'd sit there listening to him until he'd run himself out of reasons why the deal wasn't going to pay off, and then I'd just remind him once again that we were in it too deeply already to give it all up. We'd already decided to gamble, and we had to keep on trying until we ran out of time and money. Rory would look at me and shake his head in agreement. He'd get up soon after that and go drive himself home to make out his notes on that day's activities. I'd go to bed after those talks with Rory and have a tough time getting to sleep, wondering whether the decisions I'd made hadn't put all of us into unnecessary jeopardy. Elena never once complained about the path that I'd chosen. She'd see me all worried and come over and try to cheer me up. "Quit worrying so much, Jackie. It won't be the end of the world if we lose everything. It might be fun if we have to start out all over again. I'm sure we could make out just fine." She really believed it too, but I didn't want to have to start out all over. I had gotten lucky once with my firewood delivery idea and knew that it was unlikely that I'd get another opportunity just handed over to me like the other one had been. I was down to having about 3 months more of us being able to hold out when Rory came over to see me early one morning. He was excited, and for a minute I thought that maybe he finally had some good news about our land deal. Instead, he asked me to give him $3,000. "You're kidding, right, Rory? I mean, you can't really think that I've got an extra $3,000 just laying around. If you think that I do, you've disconnected from all reality. Jackie, relax, because this time I really know what I'm doing. I know that there isn't any way that the land deal is going to get sold anytime soon. That's just a fact of life, because nothing is going on out that way right now. I wish it was different, but there is nothing I can possibly do to make it different. I've been racking my brain every day, trying to think of some way to make it happen for us, but I always drew a blank because our property is just in the wrong area right now. If it was over in Pequannock or out by Brady's, I could sell it right now, but not where it is. I've been all over this area for the past year, you know that, right? I know which areas are hot and which ones don't have anything going on. That's why I need the 3,000 Jackie to option 3 parcels that I know I can sell. Instead of spending all my time trying to sell the impossible, I'll use my time to make us some money so that we can keep on making the interest payments and waiting for the tide to turn out there where our property is. It will turn to Jackie, just not right away. Tell me about these properties, Rory. But remember, we don't have any money to be out actually buying anything now. 2 of them are side-by-side pieces over by Brady. One is 7 acres, and I can option it for $500 against a purchase price of $9,000. The other is a little over 14 acres, and I can get us a 120-day option for $1,500, but the purchase price is $21,000, all cash. The third one is a big lot over off of Fort Hill Road, near the river. I already made a deal with the owners to option it for $1,000 for 120 days. They want $7,000, but the option money applies to the purchase price. I can do a lot split on the Pequannock one and come out with 5 lots, all buildable. Jackie, if only one of these options comes through for us, we'll come out of it with enough dough to keep us afloat for at least a few more months. If we just keep doing what we have been, we don't have any chance. This way, at least we have some chance. I'm sure about this, Jackie. You've just got to go with me this one last time. I could think of 100 reasons why we shouldn't do what Rory wanted, but all of those reasons still left us hanging on by a very thin thread, and Rory was telling me that nothing was going to improve in the time we had left. He and I drove over to my bank, and I got him the money as a cash advance on one of my credit cards. That tapped out another source that I'd been counting on to carry me through for another month. So now our window of opportunity was down to 2 months. Rory took the cash and left me with the image of his happy, confident, and smiling face at a time when I wanted to just lay down somewhere and sulk. What I'd just done was crazy, but not really any different than I'd been doing for the past year and a half. I wondered if I didn't possess some self-destructive character flaw that made it impossible for me to deal in a rational way with adversity. I decided to drive over to see Brady. Hearing him pissing and moaning about ordinary things was bound to cheer me up. So, cuz, I hear from Rory that you two are back in the land business again, that right? That's what he tells me this morning, Brady, but we probably won't be for much longer. I'm screwed if I know how I can keep this thing all together for much longer. My house is mortgaged right to the hilt. I owe so much money that I'm ashamed to show my face at the bank, and Rory tells me that there's no chance in selling that land anytime soon. Now that Lenny's on disability, I don't need to hire another driver because there's fewer loads going out now. I keep thinking back to how I ever talked myself into letting the situation get like it is. I wonder if there isn't something wrong with me in my head. It isn't your head, Jackie, it's your heart. You never did have any sense when it came to Rory. I love him too, but not enough to throw everything I've got away. Don't blame this on Rory, Brady. That isn't fair, and you know it. He told me from the beginning that I should just cut and run. He's only stayed with this thing because I refused to let him give up on it. He's come to me 100 times trying to talk me out of continuing. Rory's been totally honest with me from the very beginning. If anyone gets the blame, it has to be me. We went back to talking about other things until Tessa called us both in to eat. After lunch, I went out and took a look at one of Brady's new projects. He was building a huge pen and was getting ready to raise pigs on the back of his property. He had worked out a deal with a friend of his who picked up garbage from the restaurants in the area to deliver that garbage out to the farm for Brady to feed the pigs with it. Brady was certain that he wouldn't have any expense from the feeding of his pigs and would turn a nice profit by raising and selling them. After 10 minutes or so, Brady came out of his house and showed me every detail of this new operation. When I asked him if he remembered the time Uncle Sonny tried raising pigs and the stink of all that pig shit, he just laughed and told me that he wouldn't mind the smell as long as they made him some money. Jackie, Tessa, and I were talking, and we both wanted you to take this. You can give it back to us whenever it's comfortable for you. He handed me a check drawn on the family trust for $15,000. Tessa had signed it, and I had no doubt that the check was good. I tried handing the check back to him, not wanting to take money from them. Brady, thank you, but I can't take your money. I appreciate what you and Terry want to do, but I just can't take the money knowing what I know about what my future prospects look like. Jackie, take the money. You think the money is more important to Tessa and I than knowing you guys are making it okay for a little while longer? If it was us needing it, you know you'd be over here with a check of your own. This isn't money that we'd ever miss or regret. So, take this money before you really piss me off. So, I took the money and thanked him and Tessa for their thoughtfulness. I was thinking on the way back home how lucky I was that people like Brady and Tessa cared enough about Rory and Sandy and Elena, and I don't want to help us all out. I thought that maybe Elena was right after all. I could always go to work for Brady feeding the garbage to his pigs and mucking out the pig shit from their pen. I wondered how long I'd have to do that before I earned that $15,000. I said a little prayer that Rory was right about this option thing, and I wouldn't need to use any of Brady and Tessa's loan. Elena didn't seem a bit surprised when I showed her the check from Terry and Brady. Jackie, they're our family. Of course they're going to help us if they can. Aren't you always telling me about how all of you guys always have to stick together? So now that we've got money again, you want to go out to dinner? I've heard good things about this little place over near Mystic, and I've got a new routine I've been dying to try out on you. You know that it always makes me so hot when we play like that, and it's been a long time since we've been out for dinner. Elena and I were sitting in that restaurant over near Mystic, enjoying a meal of delicious thick pork chops, served with potatoes with brown mushroom gravy, a small side plate of French-cut green beans in a nice creamy onion sauce. And with all of that, we were presented with a complimentary large glass of a heavy, fruity-flavored red wine. I don't remember the name of the place, but the menu said something about Bass cooking. The food was excellent, and I left there as full as I could possibly be. As she had warned or promised, I'm not sure which it was. Elena went through a loud and pithy harangue berating me for not treating her as well as her two other gentleman friends did. She was going on and on about this genuine rabbit fur coat she'd put on layaway over in New London, and telling me, and everyone else who was listening, about all the things she had done and would do again for me, if I'd just be a sport and pony up my fair 1/3 share like her other friends had. Baby, do you know how embarrassing it is for me to be the only woman at work still wearing a cloth coat? Do you even care? Is $75 so important to you that you'd let me be the laughingstock of the typing pool? It would be different if we were married or something. Then everyone wouldn't be surprised that I was dressed in a cheap cloth coat like I'm wearing. Franklin, does your wife wear cloth or fur in the winter? Now be honest with me, cloth or fur? How many times do I have to tell you, Maeve? Don't be comparing yourself to my wife. It isn't decent. I've told you that before. You just leave my wife out of these conversations. If your wife is so special, Franklin, then why are you out here with me right now? You know why, and so do I. The reason you're here with me instead of home with her and the kiddies is because I do something special for you that she won't do. I don't mind doing that for you either, Franklin. Really, I don't. You men all seem to appreciate it, and I've been told that I have a certain knack when it comes to doing that. But I'm warning you right now that when it starts getting colder, I'm going to be wearing that beautiful rabbit coat one way or another. If I don't get that $75 from you, I'll just bet you that I can find someone else who isn't getting from his wife the same thing that you weren't getting from yours. And you know what else, Mr. Cheapskate? He will be getting it after that, and you won't be. What do you have to say about that? As she was talking, Elena was using her fingers, picking at this huge gob of chewing gum that she'd stuffed into her mouth one stick at a time after we'd finally finished our dinner. She'd pull out a long string of gum and then suck it back in with a slurping sound as if to draw attention to her words. She really could play a cheap flizzy all the way to the hilt. I could see in her eyes that she was going to take this little role playing of hers all the way this time, and I had a different plan for her, a tiny little surprise. I'll tell you what I have to say, Maeve, and it's this. I hope you brought some money in that damn big purse you're always dragging along with you. Because if you didn't, you're going to be washing a whole hell of a lot of dirty dishes. Because I'm done taking all this nagging about your precious coat. And so I'm leaving, and you can go ahead and pay the damn food bill yourself this time. Then, I just stood up and left. Two men sitting at the booth nearest the cash register actually applauded me when I walked out the door. I jumped into my car, after checking and making sure that Rory was parked alongside the restaurant just like we'd agreed. I'd also taken all of Elena's cash and credit cards out of her purse beforehand. I drove down the road about a mile, and then parked my car. 20 minutes later, Rory showed up, and a very upset Elena jumped out of his car and slammed the door really hard. Jackie, that's the meanest thing you've ever done to me. I couldn't believe it when you just left me like that, and when I saw that you'd emptied out my purse, I was so embarrassed. Did you know that those people were going to call the police after I told them I didn't have any money to pay with? I'm just glad that Rory came by looking for you. Oh, you set that up too, didn't you? Well then that's different, I guess, if I was never in any danger. That's a good one, Jackie. You sure got me this time. Elena and I both knew that whatever she was planning for revenge would be far more than what I'd just put her through. That night Elena was beyond her usual ardor after a role-playing evening. She slipped back into her Maeve character and wouldn't stop trying to wheedle money out of me until, finally, she got me to agree to give her that damn $75 for her rabbit fur coat. She sure did know how to immerse herself into a role. I'd have held out longer if I hadn't been afraid she might kill me by trying to get it up for one more time. Rory came by to see me early the next morning and asked me how I'd made out with Elena. He'd known about me planning what we had just done for a long time, but Elena and I hadn't been going out to dinner in ages, and so we had been forced to wait for the next opportunity to spring it on her. Rory had been out to dinner with us several times in the past when Elena had performed her little vignettes. I told him that Elena had said it was a good one, and he told me that she was going to make me pay for doing that to her. I just nodded in agreement. He told me that he'd paid out the option money and handed me the signed option agreements, all signed and notarized. Later that day, I went and filed them with the recorder's office. I had debated telling Rory about the check from Brady and Tessa, but I was torn between the positive effects of easing his worries and the negative effect of it acting as a stimulus for more spending from him. In the end, I decided not to tell him. Within 3 weeks, he had opened a double escrow on the 2 pieces over by Brady. We came out of that with a net profit of almost $17,000. As soon as we got the money from that deal, Rory bought the large lot in Pequannock and did a minor lot split that cost us $1,200. We got the 5 lots just like Rory had said we would, and then he sold them off, one at a time, over the next month to speculative lot builders. By the time he got all that done, we had 5 or 6 options on various parcels that Rory was confident that he could sell for a profit. Whatever we made in the way of profits, Rory just plowed back into the partnership, except for money that he and I needed to live on. From that time on, Rory was always wheeling and dealing. Sometimes it was with options, but usually, when we could afford to do it, he just bought the land outright and then sold it very quickly. It certainly didn't hurt us that inflation was driving up the prices on everything, and that people were doing all that they could to hedge their savings with something other than cash. I never cashed that check from Brady and Tessa, but Brady told me to keep it just in case it was needed. In spite of all that the inflated economy had done to drive up prices and spur development, that big investment of ours stood unsold and undeveloped for years. In 1979, when the note on the property became all due and payable, Rory and I somehow managed to raise enough money that we were able to pay the note down to $100,000, and then we financed the rest through a savings and loan where Rory had a very friendly loan officer approving the loan. With the financial pressure a thing of the past, Rory and I were both determined that we'd keep that property as long as it took us to realize a huge profit. Late in 1980, the building boom finally came to the area where our land was located. When that happened, things took off very quickly. In a matter of weeks, builders saw all the money spigots get turned on at once. Any building project, no matter how weak it might look to most of us, was getting loan approval and construction funding provided. We started getting several joint venture proposals per week. Rory turned all of them down, saying only that he was waiting for the right deal to come along. We refiled our limited partnership articles, allowing us another 7 years of partnership life. Rory told me of offers he'd gotten on one part or another of the property. He called them teasers, just people trying to find out if we were weak owners desperate to sell. They were 3 or 4 years too late for that to have worked. Finally, after 7 long and trying years, we were approached by a large real estate investment trust, one that was traded on a stock exchange. They set up a meeting in New York City, at their plush offices in Manhattan. Rory and I got dressed in our best country boy outfits and drove up with our wives the night before. The hotel we stayed at charged us $15 a day just to let us park our car there. The 4 of us went out to a nice restaurant and went sightseeing afterwards, riding on the subway, and having a ball. Rory had done a lot of research about these people who ran the trust, and he told me pretty much what to expect in the meeting. We had both agreed beforehand that I'd leave all the talking to Rory, since he was the land expert, and I was just coming along to lend him moral support. The figure that we both agreed on before we left home was $2 million. We weren't going to move off of that figure no matter what they said. Rory said it for both of us when he said that we'd sweated too much blood and spent too many sleepless nights not to get paid good when the land finally sold. And we also decided that we only wanted money, not stock or the carry-back notes that we figured they'd offer us. By the time the elevator stopped at their floor, we'd psyched each other up to fight for what we believed we were entitled to. I doubt that either of us really thought they'd ever agree to giving us as much as we wanted. We were prepared to just go back to our homes and wait for someone who would. The receptionist that greeted us got up from behind her desk and escorted us into a large conference room where 5 men, all in stylish business suits, stood up and introduced themselves to us. We all sat down, and the head guy started talking to us. He told us that they had taken an interest in the area where our land was located, and they were in the process of trying to acquire a large amount of acreage so that they could sell it to a developer for a large planned community project involving several thousand houses and a large shopping center complex. The developer, they claimed, had an ironclad funding guarantee from a large life insurance company. He named the company, and Rory and I smiled, because it was the same company that my father had his own policy with. The head guy went on to say that with the acquisition of our 3 parcels, they had enough land to fulfill their agreement with the developer. He then handed us 2 30-page documents that were revetted into their logo embossed binders, one for each of us, telling us as he did so that it was their formal proposal document and that it constituted their first and final offer to us. One of the other guys, who up until then had been silent, handed Rory and I one of his business cards, and asked us to call him if we had any questions or needed clarification on some point contained in the offer documents. One by one, they all filed past us, shaking our hands and telling us how much pleasure it had been for them to finally meet us. The head guy was the last one to shake our hands, and unlike the others, he stayed behind to speak with us. He told us that a good friend of his had first tipped him off to our little area of interest several years before, and had told him then that our 3 parcels were the key parcels in that area. He admitted that he'd had us investigated, and knew that we weren't going to just let the property go to anybody on the cheap. He said that the offer had been crafted solely by him, and he thought that we'd think it was a fair offer after we'd read it. Of course, Rory wanted to know the name of his friend. Well, I understand he's a relative of yours, and in law I believe, BD Pointon. Rory and I both laughed and told him that BD had wanted to come into the deal with us at the beginning, but there just hadn't been any room for him. That is what he told me several years ago. I spoke with him recently, and he is a great admirer of your family's tenacity and determination. He told me that you come from a family that is noted for knowing exactly what they want and for being successful in their efforts at acquiring it. That is one of the reasons why I decided to bring you my best offer right from the start. I like to think of myself as being every bit as determined as anyone else, and I usually am successful in getting what I'm after. Rory and I left the meeting room then, neither of us willing to risk taking a peek at their offer, not even when we were safely into the elevator. We walked together back to the hotel, where we'd left our wives an hour and a half earlier. We had checked out of the hotel before we'd left, and avoided having to pay an additional night's rent for their garage space too. All our luggage was in the trunk of my car, and Elena and Sandy had been window shopping up and down the street we were staying at. After we found the girls, we hopped in the car and headed back to Connecticut. We told them about the meeting and the fancy suits everyone had been wearing. They both wanted to know whether we'd reached a deal on the land, but we told them we'd been given a proposal and wanted to study it carefully before we made our decision. We got over to Rory and Sandy's at about 4 that afternoon and went inside to take a leak and to get ourselves something to eat and drink. Rory and Sandy had left their kids over with Sandy's parents and wanted to go over to get them before it got to be too late. While the girls were in the kitchen fixing us something to eat, Rory and I went into his study and shut the door behind us. We both knew it was time to skim through the proposal before deciding whether there was enough on the table to bother Mr. Bennett with finding us a lawyer to tell us how to proceed further. Jackie, not a penny less than $2 million, right? Sure, Rory, whatever you decide. If it's for anything less, we can always counter and let them know what we'll take. We both opened the binders and started to read. Halfway down the first page, Rory and I both stopped reading and looked up at each other. I'm not sure which of us started crying first, him or me, but we were hugging each other and crying when Elena and Sandy came in to let us know that our food was ready and to come and eat. Elena took the proposal out of my hand and started reading it, trying to see what had made us so upset. $5 million. Oh my God, that's how much they're offering? Soon all 4 of us were hugging and crying and trying to decide what we needed to do next. The next morning, Rory called that guy in New York that had told us to contact him if we had questions, and he told him that we had thought about their offer and we'd decided to accept it. It took about a month and a half for everything to get taken care of, but there came a day when Rory and I stood outside my bank with the cashier's check in my hands. An hour later, all of my bills paid in full, Rory and I walked out of that bank in the certain knowledge that both of us were millionaires. It had been a long and sometimes painful, even tortuous, path for both of us and for our families. The money was welcome, the amount staggering and humbling, but it wasn't the easiest money I'd ever made. There was a great sense of relief in finally seeing that project through to a conclusion. It was like a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. That night, Elena got her revenge for the little stunt I'd pulled on her in that restaurant over by Mystic. She and I dropped over to her parents' house, ostensibly because Elena needed to return some things she'd borrowed from her mother. Hey Mom, ask Jackie to tell you how much he and Rory finally sold Jackie's folly for. Jackie, please tell my mother how much her share would have been worth if she'd only held on to it. If there was ever an unhappier woman than my mother-in-law was on that particular night, well, I wouldn't want to meet her. She actually threatened to sue me if I didn't make some kind of offer to settle with her. I listened to her rant and rave for an hour, watching Elena take it all in with undisguised glee. When I couldn't possibly take another minute more of listening to her spew forth her vitriol, I finally said something to shut her up. Flo, I wanted to do something fair for you, but Elena told me she'd divorce me if I ever did. She said something about you making her go to Sacred Heart High School, and how she'd never forgive you for pushing her towards her latent sexual attraction for other women. The two of you should get together and try to work out your mother/daughter differences before you get all upset about something as unimportant as money. I started walking away then while she was left to deal with Elena's giddy braying laughter. Tom and I shared several drinks in his den, talking quietly about my huge windfall and listening with half an ear as Elena unburdened herself to her mother about her secret lesbian tendencies and told of her worries that she'd someday give in to her lust and seek out that forbidden lifestyle. I stopped even paying half attention when Elena, encouraged by something her mother had said, started in about how unfair it was to have finally accepted and come to terms with her secret yearnings only to be unceremoniously rejected by Sandy when she had made her first tentative overtures. I'm sitting here in my study tonight as I write this, trying to remember how my life or Elena's was changed with the sale of that property. I had a house custom built for Elena and I. It has 2 mini bedrooms for a childless couple, but plenty of room for Elena's foster care needs. After that money came in, we kept our cars for less time than before and didn't watch our expenses as carefully as we once would have. Rory took care of my parents by paying them 1/3 of the half of the profits that I convinced him to take. Rory deducted, first of all, the money that he scrupulously repaid me for every penny I'd ever advanced him for living expenses. My parents were never short of money after that, and it was funny watching the two of them being so careful to make sure that no one ever heard of their good fortune and their sudden affluence. Rory did persuade them to come live in his caretaker's cottage, explaining to my father that he needed him around to help protect his property, and also to help him learn how to operate his new boat and teach the children boating safety. My father took the job, but refused to be put on my brother's payroll. He did feel free to pillage my brother's stock of whiskey any time that my mother had him on too tight of a leash. Brady and Tessa were happy to find out that we finally managed to unload that big piece of land. When Elena told them how much we had gotten, they both took it well and were happy for us. Brady had decided not to keep his pigs after listening to his kids complain that their friends said they smelled bad and were making fun of them in school. The truth was that Brady hated the smell a lot more than he thought he would, and that Tessa took to refusing his amorous advances whenever she said he smelled from feeding and moving the pigs around. Brady was making money himself at a pretty good clip, buying and selling small tracts of land that he happened across. It wasn't that long before he had more money than I did again. Rory never stopped working, not even for a few days after we hit it big. The deals he brought me were a little bit bigger than before, and the terms became more complicated and complex. It was all land that he'd personally walked on, though, and we never experienced another deal that had the complications, delays, or the problems that our first big deal had. We've been very lucky, but we've been very stubborn too. I'm sure the latter trait accounted for a big part of the former holding true. Rory's sons are both in the land business, and each of them has surpassed Rory and I in total dollar volume of deals made. The difference is that we did all of our dollar volume with us acting as the principals, and they have done theirs with us or others acting as the principals. Whether with land or with residential home sales that they've made from time to time, you don't become wealthy making deals for somebody else's benefit. Neither of them is hurting for money, but they aren't in any danger of becoming rich. They don't put nearly as much effort into their business as their father did, and even still does, and they seem to enjoy themselves and their families because of the time they don't waste working. Rory and I sat quietly in the car after the meeting, the city skyline glowing behind us as dusk settled in. The weight of the offer rested heavily on both our minds. It was more than we'd imagined, enough to change everything for better or worse. After a long pause, Rory broke the silence. "You think we should take it?" I looked over at him, the partner who had been through every twist and turn of this journey with me. "It's tempting," I said honestly, "but this land means more than money. It's our future, our freedom." Rory nodded slowly. "Maybe we don't have to decide today. Let's think it through together." We agreed to spend the next few days weighing our options, talking to people we trusted, and dreaming about what could be. Whether we kept the land or sold it, one thing was certain. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, and we'd face it side by side. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, hope felt real. We started the engine, driving toward home ready to build whatever came next on our own terms. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.